Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today... we're reviewing Disclosure Day, or at least that's what it sounded like to about half the internet. We'll start things as we always do with an icebreaker question before jumping into a spoiler-free review where we'll provide a verdict on the film, and then we'll close out the show with what I expect to be very meaty and in-depth spoiler discussion because, man, a lot of things to talk about with this Spielberg movie. Joining me today, my co-host, my award-winning Oklahoma filmmaker. We have been separated and abducted in our own separate pods, but we have returned and reunited here on the podcast. Laron Chapman, welcome back to the show, sir.
It's great to be back. When's the last time we got to do a Spielberg movie together? I don't know what the last one is we reviewed, if we have reviewed one together.
Actually, I don't think we have. I was looking at this myself. No, I looked at the notes. We did
Bridge of Spies. I don't think we did any of the...
Ready Player One. We didn't do... No, Fablemans? This is the first one.
This is a first for us. Okay,
we did not do a review for the Fablemans. That was purely logistical because, like most movies in award season, they all get dumped at the end of the year, and access for it is very spotty, which makes it very hard to schedule a program around. But
in nearly 10 years of doing this, we've evaded Spielberg. So here we are. You know,
one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. We'll talk about that in the podcast as well. But listen, Spielberg, 80 years old. Still cranking out movies, and here we are having our first Spielberg review. That is crazy, Laron.
Yeah.
Joining us today, first time, very special guest. He is an Oklahoma filmmaker. He is one of the most passionate Spielberg fans that I know of, who's making a lot of cool stuff in the state of Oklahoma. Nick Sanford. Nick, welcome to the show.
What's up, sex havers? I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry. Hello, everybody. It's a bit I do on Good Trash, and I think it works better there than it does other podcasts. Sorry.
You'd be
get
surprised.
Things off to a great start. But no, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You know, I've got some Good Trash lineage here.
Sure.
It still works. We like to have good sex on this podcast. And in this episode, maybe with aliens, we'll find out. Listeners, before we get to today's review, you can support us by subscribing to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. By the way, we are on YouTube now, and I know this has been sort of a soft rollout, and maybe we'll have a bigger splash rollout someday, but if you're watching or listening to this, it would be super if you could stop what you're doing and hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Ring the bell, you'll get notified when new episodes drop, and like the video, and comment below. Did you hate Disclosure Day? Let us know. We want to hear. Did you love Disclosure Day? We want to know. Do you have conspiracy theories about Disclosure Day? You can let us know by commenting on the YouTube video. Any sort of thoughts on that, I think, is going to go a long way in helping us facilitate this conversation with the wider world. Now, let's kick things off with an icebreaker question. Now, Laron, as I said, you were abducted by the Dead Center Mothership for a few weeks, and I was talking about the Dead Center Mothership, but here we are, post Dead Center Mothership. You and I haven't really talked about any other movies that have come out in June. So I thought, let's just kick things off. We'll break the ice. What is one other film that we've enjoyed in June that has not been covered on this show, which at this point is pretty much everything that's come out in June?
Pretty much everything, yeah.
Yeah. Ron, what you got for us today?
I'm going to cheat a little bit because it came out like the tail end of May, but we also didn't discuss it together on the pod, and that's I Love Boosters, Boots Riley's
Yes.
I Love Boosters. This was something I was highly anticipating. Sorry to bother you. It was kind of a film I was perplexed by when it came out, some years ago, and have since rewatched. But it's also a movie that kind of like an onion. You kind of keep peeling, and there's more things there. And his mind is so wild and crazy. He's such an original and a visionary, and he very kind of skillfully kind of fuses these really complex themes with kind of a whimsical imagination. And to really great effect. And I feel like the kind of futuristic kind of absurdist world building that he does in his movies kind of paired with like biting satire, in this case about capitalism and consumerism. It's just really so fun and really thrilling to witness. And the cast across the board, Keke Palmer, Taylor Page. There's just, I mean, it's just great. I mean, and I felt like there's a sequence towards the end of this. I won't spoil it, but we've talked about it off air, involving a certain kind of animation that we both appreciate. It was in that moment that I knew that I loved this movie, because it was just going for it with everything. And it's funny, it's topical, it's very of the moment, but it's also just a blast, and bold in its ideas. So really excited about his career. And this is only the second film I've seen of his, and I just think that both films are so so complex and interesting to unfold. So
yeah, I would say if you were in any way enjoyed or engaged meaningfully with Sorry to Bother You, you have to see I Love Boosters. I'm not guaranteeing you will like I Love Boosters, but I'm saying if you like that sort of like just crazy, throw everything at the wall, be perplexed, and be thinking about this movie for a couple weeks afterwards, you don't want to miss out. Also, spot Don Cheadle. Spot him. It's harder to do than you think. Completely unrecognizable.
I was like, who is that? And then I wasn't until the credits, when I think they might have done one of the cast, like, I was like, oh, okay, that's who I knew him, but you won't recognize him.
It's a little bit of like Uncanny Valley, in that he's playing a character that when he appears, he's got that face, but he does not look like Don Cheadle. So you're like, anyway,
yeah,
amazing film. It's not for everybody, but I highly recommend if you are a fan of cinema, especially if you're a fan of sort of like gonzo cinema. Must see. I Love Boosters. That's a great recommend, Laron. I'm glad we were able to carve out a little bit of space to talk about that one. And I think it's still playing in theaters, or at least some theaters. And I'm sure it'll be a pay VOD.
I'd even argue it's more accessible than Sorry to Bother You. I think it's. I think it has its ideas are a little clearer to me, I think I would say, than in Sorry to Bother You. But
fun story. So I had a coworker that I was talking to about this movie, and they were not as into it as we were, but she had been to a coffee shop and taken a photo of Boots Riley because he was wearing his funny hat, not realizing that's who he was. So she saw him at a coffee shop, took a funny hat photo, was like, oh, look at this guy with the big hat. And then went to this like a screening in the San Fran Bay area a couple days later, and was like, oh, that's the guy. That's the guy. Yeah,
that's funny.
yeah, funny.
Probably pretty easy to spot with that hat, because I mean it's pretty distinct.
I will say, if you see Boots Riley and you've seen his film, you're like, yep, that guy definitely made that movie.
Yeah.
Great recommend. Nick Sanford, what is one thing that you've seen so far this month you want to share with listeners?
This is going to be psychotic coming from me, because I do not watch a lot of television programming. I think movies are infinitely superior to television programming. But I do usually allow myself to watch one television show like a year, and that's it. And the last week, I've just been wrapped up in Widow's Bay.
Oof, so
it's good. Indescribably weird. Like because and it seems like it's the last couple weeks, like it's starting to its place in pop culture is starting to snowball a little bit.
Yeah,
and so it's which is not. It just happens less these days, especially with TV, and especially with something that just is like just kind of comes out of left field like this. But
for Apple too, Apple has had. I mean, they've had a couple of hits, but generally speaking, like no one watches Apple.
Yeah, myself included. But it and even trying to pitch it to friends, I'm like, it's sort of playing with a lot of, Stephen King tropes and a little bit of John Carpenter and stuff like that, but it's funny about them, but it's not ironic or satirical, but it is funny. And it's, created by one of the main writers of Parks and Rec, but it's not really that style of humor. I mean, I have no idea how to pitch it to people, but it is still really, I think I'm just like on episode 7 is my next one, or maybe 8. But yeah,
did you see the episode directed by Ty West yet?
Yeah. I watched that last night. Yeah,
very good. Yeah, so they have a lot of good talent on there.
Yeah, it's fun to just I mean, Stephen Root having a great sort of like end of career. You just bring him on and he can just still give you a home run. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of fun. It's spooky. It's genuinely hilarious. It's having a conversation about why we like shit like this. It's post Twin Peaks without being post modern. It's just indescribable. It's which
It's
you
unique.
don't get a lot of. Yeah, it's so.
You're now the fifth person to mention this to me, Caleb included, as being one of those people. I think Caleb was the first and the third person to mention this.
Sure.
I at least twice I've told you to watch it.
But it has come from different avenues, and I'm like you. I very seldom watch television because it's such a larger commitment of time, and obviously, I'm a prolific film goer in terms of watching films in theaters. I really want to support that.
Yeah.
And so I'm never home long enough to do that, you know.
Yeah.
And again, it's a larger commitment. So like, if it's something that I'm not going to love, then do I want to dedicate 10 hours to something,
Exactly.
you know, to find out it was just okay. I could have watched 10 other movies, you know, instead of that. And so, so I do kind of wait until people I trust recommend it to me. And I do it in threes. If I hear it 3 times, now I've heard it 5 times.
Yeah.
So, the bell has been rung. I will be watching this show.
Did you just say the bell has?
That is a plot point in the show. So
yeah, there you go. No, the bell is wrong. Is very specifically a thing that might or might not happen in the show. I will come back
to this episode to know what the context of that is.
Yeah,
Widow's Bay. I'm so glad, Nick, you brought that up because I don't really do TV. We generally talk 95% about movies, and the only time TV comes up is in these scenarios. But I was
because
like,
movies are better than TV. Yeah, I get it.
You know, I'm not going to go that far. I think every media's got its strengths and weaknesses. There's a lot of reasons I like to talk about media, film on this podcast, but. My point being is I was like, man, this is a show that's so good. I wish I had a space to like talk about it. Cause last thing I'd say is if you're a horror fan, specifically like if not hard, like, oh, it's going to fuck you up horror. It's like the tropes of horror. It's a horror comedy. And the thing that I would say is like, it's got a nice long through line that plays out and a really, has a good momentum. It feels cohesive, like a Stephen King novel, but also almost like maybe not the best example. You're like it's not like Dark Tower, but you know the way that Dark Tower is combining like a bunch of different genres, and then there's all these different sub stories that sort of fit under this umbrella, and you're like, this shouldn't work because like every episode of this show is a different horror subgenre that still somehow works cohesively in this paradigm they've created with the main story. So it's a great time.
Yeah, but it's also something that I think I'm going to recommend to my mom, who is like not into horror shit at all, you know. So I mean, it's not so gnarly that you know, the more weak stomached can't handle it. But I don't know. It's a funny horror show without being, you know, postmodern. Well, I guess I don't know. Yeah, it's breaking my brain. I just don't know how to talk about that.
It's not so like aren't these tropes dumb? It's like it's having fun with them, but also sort of still celebrating them. Yeah, it's interesting.
It sounds like it's recontextualizing them in a different way.
That's bit.
Become a little harder to.
Yeah, sort of.
Stephen King's a good comp though, but Stephen King, but like a little more self-aware. You know, I would say.
I mean, he can be pretty self-aware sometimes, but and even like the font of Widow's Bay, like that to me is like the Stephen King font. You know, like the sort of serify. I don't know, you know, what the name of that font is, but that looks like the font that a lot of his 70s and 80s books like had the thing. But it also, there's one episode that reminds me of Jaws. There's a couple episodes that remind me of John Carpenter. You know, it's just pulling from a lot of stuff in interesting ways. So, that's mine.
You guys are selling it. The guys are selling it.
It's got like a haunted house episode. It's got a witchcraft I mean, I don't want to spoil it, like the context of anything, but like I'm saying,
like, horror adventure.
It's got the scary Jaws type thing. Yeah, it's all there. I love it.
But it will have like kind of not bottle episodes, but like, you know, one episode will be devoted kind of more to like one character, and you kind of get to figure out what her deal is, and then you kind of go back to the main guy, and then we jump back to whatever. But it doesn't feel, you know, because that's really hard to do in TV. But yeah, I mean, every episode is just like pitch perfect. It's and it's funny. I mean, God, I just cannot stop laughing at it. So,
and also low commitment, 30 to 40 minutes an episode, not full hour plus, which is nice.
That is so refreshing because I can watch 2 episods in like 70 minutes. And
so a show I've been I started many months ago. We'll go down that rabbit hole, but like Dark Matter, also an Apple TV show, excellent science fiction, really dig it. But like every episode is over an hour, and I'm like, I'm into, but like there's something about the difference between it's 35, 40 minutes versus it's an hour and 10. You're just like, do I really want to watch that? Even if it's good, you know?
Which I think helps give Widow's Bay a little bit of its sitcom vibe, kind of, you know, just because they are so like kind of contained and you know, just get to the point. And And it feels, I mean, yeah, it's weird. It's like a spooky workplace comedy or something. I don't know. It's
but where the workplace is the mayoral office of this island town.
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah. Yeah, what if Parks and Rec was kind of spooky? But again, that feels disingenuous because the style of humor isn't the same. I'm going to shut up because it's I'm starting to fritz out trying to think of
Widow's Bay, ladies and gentlemen. Great show.
Great show.
I knew I could count on you guys to bring good stuff. Two things that I was like, man, I would love to talk about this on a podcast if the opportunity came along. So great, Rex. Mine is short. Mine's a lot more basic. It's called The Furious. This is just an old school hand-to-hand martial arts film. I don't know if you guys saw The Raid. It came out like a decade or so ago. Kind of in that same vein where it's like gritty. It's not expensive. It's I think it's Southeast Asian, I believe. Hope I get that right. But yeah, it's an incredible action movie. Like, there's John Wick where it's the big bravado. It's flashy. There's a lot of guns and stuff. Those movies are, especially for incredible masterpiece in terms of action cinema. This is doing something very different. It looks like it's like made for a fraction of the budget. It's shot, it's much more intimate, and it's all hand-to-hand combat. Occasionally people will get like hammers or certain like weapons, but very, very, very little gunplay. And I think after about the 10-minute mark, it is basically nonstop action. Like it's constantly going. And some of the set pieces in this are unbelievable. And I feel like I have a pretty high bar for like good action choreography or good action movies. But there's a scene that takes place in like a club, which I'm like, fight scene in a club in an action movie. You've seen this a million times. You've never seen it like this before. And it's got like an MMA arena in it. You've probably seen the trailer, and it like blew my mind because it just keeps going and getting crazier and crazier. Super silly, super fun, wears its emotions on its sleeve, but it's really all about, it knows what it's about. It's a super simple premise. Girl kidnapped, little girl, kind of like Taken. Dad's out to get her. He finds out there's this crazy, like, huge conspiracy theory, and he's got to fight his way to the top. That's it. That's the movie. But it's all about the action. It's an hour and 45 minutes or so, I think, and it's absolutely worth a watch, especially if you can catch it in a theater full of action movie fans. Lots of people reacting very viscerally. But it's called The Furious. It's currently playing in theaters around the country right now, so highly recommend that one if you have not heard of it.
I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, but I've been kind of doing a little bit of a John Woo deep dive lately. I got The Killer and Hard Boiled. I've had them queued up, and I watched The Killer for the first time a few days ago, and then The Furious sort of popped up, and I mean, they're different, but it kind of made me want to see it that much more, just to
same
just
vein
see.
though.
Yeah.
It was one of 6 movies I didn't see this weekend.
Dude, this weekend was brutal. I'm still, Leviticus is still, I'm like, I really want to see that. I will find time because we're going to talk about that in a later podcast. But I was like, there's like 8 movies to watch. Which 2 do I pick? It's Toy Story 5 hit theaters. The Furious. Leviticus. Man, anyway, great time for the movies, guys. Good news. Great time for the box office too, because today's film, we're going to talk about Disclosure Day did well, but also Toy Story 5 just lit the box office on fire. Biggest opening weekend of the year. I think it was the biggest opening weekend since Minecraft last year. So we're going to talk about there. All I mean to say with that is it's a great time to be a film lover and cinema goer. Sure. Well, let's talk more about Disclosure Day. Before we get to Disclosure Day specific, our icebreaker question this week. This is Steven Spielberg's 5th movie about aliens. So I thought it might be fun just to beg the question. What is your favorite fictional alien? Or maybe I should say, who is your favorite fictional alien? And this could be from a Spielberg movie, could be from a Star Wars movie, a Star Trek, an animated series. So I'll throw it to you first. Nick Sanford, who is your favorite alien?
My favorite movie of all time is E.T. the Extraterrestrial. But just for the sake of, just for a little bit of variety, I think I want to spotlight a certain xenomorph in a certain 1979 Ridley Scott movie called Alien, because that is a badass motherfucker that just, does not give a shit about what anyone thinks of it. And it's scary. The design is crazy, like what Geiger did with it, the way it's utilized, the way, Ridley Scott lights it with like the moisture on it and all that. It's just maybe the scariest looking thing that like I've ever seen in a movie. And he's not as cuddly as E.T. and not as empathetic, but he's just as effective at trying to do what he wants to do. And so yeah, that's my pick.
Iconic design, still holds up. By the way, also cross promotion, they just announced a sequel to the Alien Clone Marines. We're getting a sequel to that. So shout out to the Xenomorph, still alive in film, television, and video games. What do you know?
Yeah, you'll never kill the Xenomorph. He's got acid blood. He's always going to be around.
Always be around. Excellent choice. Laron Chapman, who is your favorite fictional alien?
Yeah, I mean, I had those kind of reversed. I had E.T. in my back pocket, but number one was going to be the Xenomorph. I'm even wearing the T-shirt for those watching.
Oh, hell yeah.
Channel.
Yes. Excellent.
But yeah, I just agree with you, Nick. I mean, the creature design for me is unmatched. I just feel like every alien creature design is going to pale in comparison to that one. There's never going to be one that we kind of, it's the model, it's the blueprint. And it's the first time they made aliens like genuinely terrifying. They've always been, E.T. kind of made them like mysterious but then made them again empathetic and warm and cuddly. But there's something about the Xenomorph that is just so visceral and so primal, and we get to know the anatomy so much about them, and like the things that happen, how they morph, how they spit out it's just all of that is just something that's so indelible in our minds now every time I think of an alien, I'm like, even if they do exist, we'll get into that later, then what form would they take? There's always going to be a little bit of hesitation, mainly because of how this particular design has kind of made them so terrifying. So
it's a scary penis monster.
Yeah.
Well, Laron, I have to ask you a question, and both of you, Nick, do we think the Xenomorph is more or less scary now that we know that crazy Michael Fassbender made them in a Frankenstein's castle on another planet?
That's only if you
character is. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that's only if you accept that as literal and not just Ridley Scott fan fiction. I'm not as hung up on like the lore of it's really just the first two movies or my, kind of it for me. So I just don't really think, I mean, as cool as it is to see Michael Fassbender play flute with himself and all that. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, they could do 50 alien movies and do all sorts of stuff with where does it come from, and it's not going to take away the fact that it's fast and it can hide and it's got acid blood so you can't shoot it too close and all that. That's always going to be terrifying. But
yeah,
I think it works both ways. I think it's scary when it's a mystery, but I actually think kind of knowing a little bit more about just the sort of intent and motivations and I don't know, fuckery that went into making the Xenomorph actually also makes it scary in a different way.
Sure.
I personally, I am, me and Sunrise Tipicani, we are the defenders of Prometheus. There's the two of us, I'm pretty sure.
I like Prometheus a lot. It's not perfect, but
it's not perfect, but it's good. There's dozens of Prometheus defenders.
It's fascinating. It transcends good or bad. It's fascinating, Prometheus. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, it's
that and Alien Covenant though. I wouldn't say I'm a massive fan, but I do like them. I tend to like them more than most people. I think they're exploring a lot of really interesting ideas.
Sure.
I'll say that much. I am going to go with, you guys said the Xenomorph. So the other option, of course, the other iconic alien that's even fought the Xenomorph for time or two is the Predator. Now I know we just got a new movie last year that a lot of people didn't like because it made the Predator a little less scary. I am a big fan, especially the original film Predator, where Arnold fights him out in the jungle. Firstly, this thing, you're like, what is this? It's invisible. It's got all this. You think you don't even realize it's an alien for like half the movie. And then when you finally see the thing, you're like, oh my God, this is disgusting. And it was all done with the practical effects and everything. It is truly one of the most gnarly creature designs I think I've ever seen. Now, I think it's been diluted by the fact that we've gotten multiple sequels. So we've kind of become, you've seen it enough times that it feels less shocking. But my wife had never seen any of them before we watched the new Alien, then went directly into the Predator movie. She had not seen the Predator movies, and she was like, "Holy shit, that guy's disgusting." I'm like, "That's right, still holds up." I think.
Are they the mandibles? Is that what they call them?
Yeah,
those things are pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible. But no, I think it's a great design. I'd also give a big shout out to the Shai Hulud giant sandworms from Dune. We are in a Dune year, so I'm going to celebrate by giving a shout out to the Shai Hulud.
Mm-hmm. Another big penis monster alien. Sorry.
A lot of big penis monster aliens out there, really.
Yeah.
Very galaxy full of them. Sorry, Chewbacca, you didn't make the cut today. Listeners, viewers, what are your favorite aliens, or who are your favorite fictional aliens? You can let us know by commenting below if you're watching on YouTube, or you can send us an email at thecinemetropolis@gmail.com. With all that being said, let's get to our spoiler-free review of Disclosure Day.
Good morning, Kansas City. Let's take a look at today. Today's.
Do you understand what she's saying?
I hear her. It's gibberish. I can't understand it.
And I can.
What's happening to me?
People are starved for the truth.
So according to IMDb, Disclosure Day is described as, if you found out we weren't alone, if someone showed you, proved it to you, would that frighten you? That is not a description, IMDb. That is a question.
It's also a quote from the movie, but
that's what I'm saying, man. Who writes these things? Either way, thanks for that, IMDb.
Name is David Kyo.
I think that was like the official like Universal like press release, because they were like trying to keep the lead buried on the movie, and so they're like, well, the synopsis will be one of the most tantalizing quotes from the film. So,
but then we're going to show you a trailer that shows you most of the movie.
Yeah,
it's choices. This is Steven Spielberg's 34th theatrical feature film as a director, 35th if you count Duel, his original film that was made, well, in the US was released on television. Still a beloved movie, great movie, but 34th theatrically released film. It is his fifth film. It's taking on the subject of aliens, as I noted a moment ago. Disclosure Day stars Emily Blunt as Margaret Fairchild, Josh O'Connor as Dr. Daniel Kellner, Colin Firth as Noah Scanlon, Eve Hewson as Jane Blankenship, and Coleman Domingo as Hugo Wakefield. Disclosure Day was released on June 12th, 2026, and opened number one at the U.S. box office on its opening weekend. It grossed $44.5 million domestically for a grand global total. So if you combine that with the international numbers of $92.9 million, it was Steven Spielberg's biggest opening for an original film. So we're not talking about Jurassic Park or Ready Player One or films based on previous material. Highest grossing opening weekend for an original film for Spielberg. So, at 80 years old, it's not a bad record. So this movie has been, as I noted, very divisive. I will tell you that as I was watching the movie, I was like, uh-oh, I can see where the people are going to either roll their eyes or lean in. And, so I genuinely have no idea how you guys are going to feel about it. But needless to say, I think we can all, if you've been on the internet, if you've been on Letterboxd even, you can see this is a very, very divisive film. So I'm eager to get you guys' take. Laron, Chapman, I'll turn to you first. What did you think of Disclosure Day?
Yeah, I managed to catch this one twice because I felt like I needed to submit my feelings about it before we did the podcast. And I will say, in full disclosure, that when the trailer for this came out, as much as I love Spielberg, I was like, I don't know. It was giving me that could go one of two different ways, and I'm betting it's going to go the latter. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised, with my overall feelings about it. But the audience reception for this obviously has been all over the place. It's kind of weird. Like, it's generally well received by critics. I mean, I think it's sitting at an 80-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, if you use that as a metric for good movies. But some have declared this being like one of Spielberg's best films in years. And then another demographic has said this is the single worst movie he's ever made. And I find that that very diametrically opposed, gap in reception very, very fascinating. I fall somewhere in the middle. I found this to be at times really exhilarating, and then at times very frustrating. I think it has pacing, and especially on second viewing, pinpointed individual stretches of it that have pacing and logic issues for me. But I still somehow found myself kind of drawn though into the central mystery, if you will. And then what I really think was a really pretty great performance from Emily Blunt here. I think she's, really, giving a full bodied performance and is called upon to do quite a bit here. Josh O'Connor is decent in it as well. But I think the real MVP here is that John Williams score.
Oh, really? Nice.
I actually really enjoyed that, and it definitely even disembodied from the movie. I think it's very strong. But like all Spielberg movies, especially the latter half of his career, this it feels like it's trying to be profound, but at the same time, it's very didactic. And those are kind of constantly at tension with each other here. But I would say overall, there are enough individual moments here and ideas here that intrigued me to enjoy this on two sits, despite my reservations about certain structural issues.
All right. So Laron's coming down generally positive. Nick Sanford, what did you think of Disclosure Day?
Very close to everything Laron just said. The first trailer comes out last December, and I thought it looked kind of like a more expensive 2006 Sci-Fi Channel original movie. I was like, uh-oh. I have seen it twice just because I wanted to, really give it its due. Because the divisiveness, it's, Steven Spielberg is the George Washington of my Mount Rushmore directors. Mount Rushmore of directors. M. Night Shyamalan is my Abraham Lincoln of, director Mount Rushmore. So the fact that Spielberg is having sort of like a Shyamalan type, divisive, just, everyone, this is a piece of shit. It's brilliant, whatever, is like a real circuit swapper for me. I'm not, because really the most divisive thing I think Spielberg had ever done up until this point was AI, which has a lot of similarities with Disclosure Day, like especially a sequence at the end, which we'll get to. But I mean, as far as the actual movie itself, I'm of two minds. On one hand, I don't even know what the premise of this movie is. I don't know what it's really actually about. On the other hand, there's a lot of stretches at the beginning, or, like, especially in the first chunk, that I really think work given that sort of lack of, sort of clear, dramatic question. I think Emily Blunt is incredible in this, like maybe the best she's ever been. And we could get to it later, more into spoilers, but I kind of wonder what this movie is, if it's completely from her perspective, if it works better, if we're discovering everything along with her. And then there's kind of a point in the last, 40% of the movie that it doesn't fly off a cliff for me at all, but it gets really tedious and it really starts spinning its wheels. And there are certain stretches, like Coleman Domingo is an incredible actor. And the fact that some of the monologues that he is required to give in this don't completely derail the thing is just a testament to how good he is at his job. And I think the biggest sort of criticism I could level at this movie is one of the reasons Spielberg's been so important to me is because no one knows how to block a movie better than him. No one knows how to use a camera and position actors and use cuts to communicate, where these people are. And all of his best movies, you can turn the sound off and you know exactly what's going on. Like, you turn the sound off on E.T., you get from the first frame of Elliot, okay, this is a, disenfranchised kid. He feels alone. He wants to blah, blah. And as you watch the movie, just visually, you get exactly what you need to get. And I don't think you can say that about a lot of this movie, because so much of it is dialogue dependent, which I think is usually when he's kind of at his creakiest, especially in the last half of his career. As soon as I said that, like 18, monologues from like his best movies just like popped into my head, because I can already hear people, what about the Quint speech? What about the John Hammond thing? I get all that. But yeah, that's kind of a problem like for the movie, but also, you know, there's a lot I like, a lot I don't like. I still really don't know what to make of it, which isn't the worst thing because he's given us several sci-fi masterpieces at this point. So he's owed, like, let him just sort of experiment and kind of fuck around and see what can happen. And so that's why, like, I didn't need this thing to be just like a grand slam because he's already got like 8 of those, you know, as it is. And so so I'm not mad that it's not, you know, just like an instant classic the way some of his others are. And I'm curious to see how it grows from here. I don't know. It's just been such a bizarre reaction to it that it'll just be fascinating to see like what its place in pop culture continues to be, especially given like this month, you know, like what's going on with like UFOs and UAPs and people on, you know, News Nation screaming, we need disclosure, you know, whatever. Yeah. So
that's just this month. I thought that was every day in the year 2026.
It's gotten like the last month and a half. It's just really, you know, my YouTube has just every other video recommended to me is some guy, you know, yelling at, you know, Chris Como or whatever his name is about, you know, whatever. This is what I've seen, and I may or may not.
Where's our cybersecurity whistleblower? You know, in 2026 America, we need those people wherever you are. Please, by all means, disclose the information. Please.
Yeah, blow the whistles.
Well, okay. It's funny you say that. We're going to talk about this more in spoilers. The question, I think, the divisiveness is, do people buy what this movie's putting down in the year 2026? If a disclosure day type event were to occur, do we believe that people would respond in such a way that this film presents? And therein lies, I think, therein lies my perception of what one of the things people are responding very strongly about, which is, this is completely crazy. Maybe in 1990, you could have put this out there and I would have bought it, but this is 2026. We're way too cynical about the world today. So this is all hogwash, you know? Yeah. I mean, because one could argue we've had multiple disclosure days in the last 5 years and
nothing happens.
Nothing happens. So now maybe not disclosure of alien, although there have been disclosures of alien, like all the UAPs.
I don't know.
The government's basically like...
Obama was on Stephen Colbert not too long ago and he asked him about the presence of aliens and he said, I mean, obviously.
Well, people have testified in Congress, like, hey, we know this stuff exists. Here's footage. We don't know what it is. Isn't that crazy? You know, like, so it's like, I just, that's kind of the question. And I think, you know, I have thoughts about why it simultaneously works and doesn't at the same time. We'll get to in spoilers. But so Laron's generally pro. Nick, you're sort of an edema, but you're generally kind of pro. I would say this for my money. Laron, I agree with everything you said. I think the pacing for me is the biggest issue with this film. It's 2.5 hours long. It should have been under 2 hours. There's entire characters. I would have cut Josh O'Connor's girlfriend character. Not that it was a bad performance or anything. There's just, he gets into this like religious subtext, which I understand why it's there. But if I'm looking at the totality of the film, I'm like, you didn't really give us a satisfying enough resolution to some of the questions you posed for that entire subplot to need to exist. Right. So it's too long. And I would say specifically, I want to say it's the second act. The movie kind of comes to a grinding halt for a while. We get and then it picks back up, and then we get to the third act, and then the third act is so long. It really stretches on longer than it should have. So I would say Caleb's number one biggest criticism is this movie needed some diligent editing. And I'm not saying the editing that's here is bad. I'm just saying there's too much story, too many ideas in order to create a maximally impactful trip to the cinema, especially in a film that I feel like Steven Spielberg is being incredibly didactic about what he's wanting to say. So I'm like, all right, if your goal is to have a message and a thing to put out there, make it impactful. And in that case, don't make it 2.5 hours long because it sort of dilutes the larger point. Okay. So that's the part that I struggle with. However, all of that being said, I agree with what you guys said. Emily Blunt's incredible. I think Steven Spielberg, at 80 years old, guys, this whole movie is a chase scene. This whole movie is essentially a chase. And there are some of the most exhilarating, exciting, car chase sequences I've seen in years. And I'm a big Fast and Furious head, but none of them come close. None of those come close to the car chase, the car and the train sequence we get about midway through the movie. It's simply one of the coolest things I've seen at the movies in at least a good 5 years. And to see it just done so well, and it looks so, they make it look so easy with practical effects. Anyway, all to be said, I found the action sequences to really work very effectively. The titular Disclosure Day sequence, I really liked cinematically. Now, we'll talk more about in spoilers about how realistic is it. That's really not the point. As a cinematic sequence where I'm watching something that should actually be super boring, he makes it so propulsive. It's like I'm leaning in. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen next? And just masterful storyteller, visual storyteller at work in the last 10 minutes of the movie. There's just a lot of stuff kind of throughout that really, I think, negatively impact the overall like story pacing and point people are taking away. So yeah, overall, I like the movie quite a bit. I want to talk about how we might compare it to a couple of his previous films, especially late career films. A lot of people have come at this movie saying it's sort of like boomer coded, and what I mean by that is it's the question I have is, do you think this movie is out of touch? And if it's out of touch, do you think the suspension of disbelief required is worth to believe for the underlying point? I don't know. It's a sort of a loaded question. So I'll throw it to you first, Nick. Like, when you think about how you compare this to the previous films of Spielberg, did you find this remotely believable?
Yes and no. I mean, it kind of gets back. Well, part of it gets back to the question of like, what actually is this movie even really about? Because it's, without getting too spoilery, I kind of wonder if the thing that happens at the very end should actually happen 45 minutes into this, and then we see what the effects are, sociologically or whatever. In terms of being boomer coded, one of my biggest, like, his press tour in the months leading up to this movie have made me think, oh my dear Jesus Lord, this is going to be his megalopolis. This is going to be an out of touch.
It sounded that way on the press tour. I was like, uh-oh. And the trailer wasn't good. The signals were there, man. You weren't crazy. I also had the same feeling.
And out of touch, former master who hasn't really been relevant culturally in a while is going to scream at us for 2.5 hours with a camera about why the world would be better if we thought the way that he did. And I feel that a little bit with this. I think it's tricky. Because everyone keeps saying, because that has been one of the criticisms, and it has been a criticism of mine, is does the ending, like, even, is it plausible? Well, I don't know what the ending is because of the way the movie stops. I mean, you kind of get a sense from, some sort of tertiary characters, kind of what their reactions are and all that. And maybe that's part of it. And if that was kind of supposed to be part of the point, I think the 2.5 hours before that should have been structured very differently. Should have like really loaded the deck so that it pays off like a slot machine whenever we get that final line and, cut to credits. But in terms of, just like what he thinks he's doing, I guess, or what he's been doing with the press tour, which is screaming, we need disclosure, it would make the world a better place. I think if this actually happened, are we getting into that now? Like, if this actually happened, or is this later in the show?
Maybe just vaguely. Yeah. If a disclosure event were to happen, is that what
I mean, I'm of the opinion that half the people that watched it would just totally dismiss it as either that's fake, that's bullshit, that's a hoax, they're not telling us everything, and therefore I shouldn't even give it the time of day, which I think I might be part of that. Right. The other half that actually believes it, I think they would probably die from fear and shit their pants to death, because that would be your perception of reality just changed instantly in a way that I don't know the human mind can actually handle. If we were even to be able to perceive it as, extraterrestrial life, I'm not sure that true alien life we would even recognize as such. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the novel Flatland. It's one of the very first science fiction novels ever, but it's about a bunch of two-dimensional shapes, like a triangle and a square and a rectangle and all this. They live in 2 dimensions. And there's this little red dot that shows up every once in a while. And they're like, what is this red dot? This is really weird. It's breaking their brains trying to figure it out. And at the end, you figure out it is a 3-dimensional ball bouncing, occasionally landing in their plane of existence. And that's kind of like, would we even recognize actual true alien life as such? And so, which is kind of, it's like, I wish that was what the movie would get into. Disclosure Day should have been the beginning. And then we, kind of unpack it from there. So yeah, I guess that's where I land is I don't think it would be the kumbaya rah 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 that Spielberg thinks it is, and I think it's a little arrogant of him to, assume that is what would make the world a better place, much in the way that Francis Ford Coppola making Megalopolis. All we need is like one architect with a heart of gold to fix everything for us. It's just like, okay, buddy. All right. But
yeah.
I hate feeling that way because I love Spielberg. So
yeah. Well, Laron, I see you shaking your head. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I agree. I kind of feel like the skepticism that our current climate has. I mean, we are so distrusting of the truth, even when it's staring us in the face. And just because we have such a distrust for the people that are presenting it to us, and there's a lot of a lot of structural factors for that. But I also think that if comparing this film to some of his other work, I think that it still has his hallmark, which I always love about his movies, is this kind of unabashed earnestness and sentimentality. And there is a boomer quality to it, but I think that's pretty much all of his movies. It has that to it. It's kind of a charm to it. It's it's an aspect of this that I don't actually find I find endearing rather than grating about his movies. But I think in the context of this, if we were to take it literally or seriously, I don't buy it, because I think that he has an optimism that unfortunately, it just does not translate to our current landscape. And so, yes, I do not think that people would react to a disclosure of this magnitude as this film presents it, if you will. So, but yeah, so I mean, but it still has elements of his other movies tonally. That sense of wonder is here in spurts, where you're leaning in and you're just kind of like, oh, like it's that sense of discovery that he can capture so well, that sense of awe-inspiring, something profound is happening and we should lean in, and we do. I just think that where this movie ultimately lands doesn't ring true, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about him. I think he has a very strong optimistic point of view on humanity. Even when he's being cynical for Spielberg, he's still hopeful he's like, yeah, the government's coming. It's all lies. We need truth. And if only we knew about aliens, that would bring us all together, Yeah. And, I think if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I might have still been able to get on board. 10 years ago, I definitely could have gotten on board. 2026, it's just a real hard pill to swallow. I have to say. Now, the flip side of that, though, is just because it's so idealistic and perhaps out of touch, what I like about it is that it's designed, I think, to also inspire us, and that's where I'm like, okay, there are probably two types of people when you're watching a Spielberg film and they see the sentimentality. Either they roll their eyes like, yeah, you old man, be getting all sappy on me. And there's the people who are like, man, what if we could make the world more like that? And I haven't come down on a clear answer with Disclosure Day yet, because I simultaneously think that it's very unrealistic that World War III would get stopped by the reveal that aliens are real. I just can't. It's way too difficult.
Is that an us problem? Is a good question.
That is an us problem, the flip side is
optimism isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of like
a good thing.
Choose to see the good, Like would we at face value react the way that they do? No, but the fact that I'm happy that he still does. I'm happy that he's still in that headspace. I think just collectively as a society, we are not, or no longer.
Well, and this is why I say, isn't this the play? And this is why I come back and say, you're right to feel this way, but maybe it is out of touch, but also our world is not going to get better if we become deeply cynical. It will only get worse. We need some, whether it's a filmmaker, artists often play this role, but it could be politicians, business leaders. I don't really care. You need someone out there to inspire us to be like, yeah, this seems crazy, right? Well, let's work. What can we do to get us closer to that? Where we can believe that's
the word.
Hope. Yeah. Well, but also not just hope, not like cynical though. It needs to be honest. Like, I actually believe in this vision we're talking about for the future, not the, you know what I mean? Because like our culture has become so deeply cynical that a thing that is even like projecting optimism is getting like shit on, because it's like, that's so out of touch. That's unbelievable. It's unrealistic. And I just have a hard time saying
humanity be restored is in many ways the question, is like our humanity, in the sense that I believe that, hey, this person isn't out to get me, or this person doesn't have an agenda against me, that they're actually doing this for the better good, and they're not doing it to advance themselves or what have you. And unfortunately, like we it's hard to feel that way right now, but does that mean it's always going to be that way? Are we able to get back to a place that we were a decade ago? And I think that, and maybe he believes that we can, and he's in that kind of still in that sappy, place where he's wearing his heart in his sleeve. And I still believe in hope, sort of thing, but yeah, so it's an interesting film to come out right now, I think, is what we're all kind of saying here.
I think that's it's interesting to come out now, and I think that, in my opinion, that's the real conversation about the movie is, are we at a point where people unabashedly, earnestly saying there is still hope for humanity? Have we reached the point where we're saying that's bad and out of touch? And if that's the case, then I'm like, wow, we really have reached a low, because a lot of people hate the movie for that reason. So yeah, I don't know. Nick, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just, how is the movie meant to be engaged, and take away like, Papa Steve's 3 months of just bizarre, borderline Joe Rogan type rants and shit on, Facebook or on podcasts and interviews and stuff. The movie, if you view it as, an accurate reflection of contemporary society, you will bump up against it, as, the three of us have to, some degrees or another. If you do view it as something like, Superman is one of my favorite, fictional characters ever, just because he is so impossible to achieve. But I still think you need those unrealistic, idealized, aspirational figures to look up to. And that is the when I look at this movie that way, it is a little bit more, it is easier for me to, I don't want to say stomach it, but, get on board with it. I mean, and even like the whole, World War III is about to happen and then aliens like pop up. I don't know if you've seen like the 3-hour special edition cut of James Cameron's The Abyss. That's literally The Abyss. There's some weird aliens, and also World War III is happening, and then the two collide at the end, and it's like this positive, uplifting thing. But in terms of the Spielberg didacticism, I think he's better when he's not being as literal, better just as a storyteller, because, you look at E.T. and Close Encounters, those are very spiritual films. They're not being super, especially Close Encounters. It's literally about, I don't know how to talk about this thing that is happening to me that I'm feeling. I cannot express it to my family. And E.T. is the same way. I mean, it's a very empathetic movie without ever once saying the word empathy. I think the last time and it's been a while since I've seen one of these movies, but I think the last time Spielberg was actually like culturally vital was in 2005. War of the Worlds comes out June of that year, and it's his reaction to 9/11, but also a lot of what he's doing with that movie is look what colonialism gets you, look what invading another space gets you. You radicalize young men like Tom Cruise's son in that movie. They go nuts and they just want, they just become like these seething little hate monsters that just wind up getting themselves killed, all for no good reason. Now the last, I don't know, 20% of that movie kind of, writes itself into a corner. But I think like the first 75 to 80% of War of the Worlds is like a masterpiece because he is, meeting that moment in, also a really dark, cynical time in American history by commenting on, our fear of the unknown, our, need to flee, just like utter destruction. And then what that does to a family unit. And that is him, humming like at his most pure, where he's not being didactic about it. 6 months later, Munich comes out. Mm-hmm. There's a lot I like about Munich. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I might be, kind of like unfairly criticizing it, but it is 2 hours and 45 minutes long. And it has many scenes where, Mossad agents or whatever sit down and have conversations about like, what are we doing? And is all this blah, 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 when it's like, fuck, dude, when you're just letting us watch these guys do this, it's so much more impactful than sitting down and actually just, vomiting it, out through dialogue and all that. And, and this movie kind of has a little bit of both. I mean, the thing with like, this movie, like being a plea for empathy or whatever, it is kind of weird that this movie's version of empathy is kind of everything he said don't do in Minority Report, which is like...
Right? Yeah.
Weird. I think I get what he's going for, and I do like the idea. And Emily Blunt, I mean, is so fucking good that she's able to make that shit like really, really work. Those scenes where she's reading a lot more into people than what they're willing to give up. I don't know if the movie itself handles that particularly well. I wonder what happens if Tony Kushner or Steve Zalian writes the script versus David Koepp, who is a writer that I have a lot of respect for, but he is at his best when he's adapting like a good, clear, pre-established work like Jurassic Park or War of the Worlds or Spider-Man, and not as successful when he's got someone like Steven Spielberg or Tom Cruise in the case of the 2017 Mummy over his shoulder saying, do this, do this, do this.
I feel like this is Hope Diction, if you will. And that's so, and, and there's something like, when you have that, your mom or someone like you're having a bad day and everything awful has happened and you have every right to be like, throwing a fit and, I don't know, just blowing a gasket about how everything's unfair, but your mom just comes to you and says some kind of cheesy platitude to you that she says every single time. But the difference is that even though she's saying it, she actually means it, and there's a part of us that wants to reject that because, it's our mom. But then occasionally, when things work themselves out and you realize everything that you were pissed off about or whatever wasn't the end of the world and everything's going to be fine. And your mom was actually right, So there's that kind of like, there's that part of me that's kind of viewing it through that lens where it's like, I don't really buy this right now. But to Nick's point, if the world gets better, fingers crossed, we might revisit this movie with a different set of eyes and a different set of feelings, and it may actually be kind of a warm hug, back then. I think just right now, we're so steeped in that cynicism that we keep alluding to that it's hard to embrace goodness, if you will. And but I do think this is Spielberg, like, in his later life, with the Fabelmans, and where it feels like he's being his most introspective, which seems to be what a lot of these filmmakers, Martin Scorsese, like still making movies this late in the game, being a little bit more critical of their own right. work and their own influence. Like he did that with Killers of the Flower Moon, with that epilogue there at the very end, which is something he didn't have to do that. He could have just told the story that he was telling and then let the chips lay where they lie. But he actually wanted to address the fact that maybe there was an overemphasis of this kind of violence and stuff that he perpetuated in his stories that may have glorified it in ways that were not beneficial culturally, for young men or what have you. And so, and I think Spielberg is hearkening back to a lot of the things that he was saying in some of his earlier work, but with a different set of eyes, you know. And I think that, but with a little bit more urgency here, and that's why it's probably less refined and a little bit more like with a cracked voice, if you will. Because he really believes it, or wants to believe, or wants us to believe it, or wants us to get back to that place. You know. So.
I think my hunch is that Spielberg is just getting less patient. A few different things I want to say, kind of in response to what both of you were saying. Number one, Nick, I agree. I think Spielberg is better off when he's less didactic. We see this in E.T. We see this in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He's exploring themes in a much more subtle and nuanced way that it allows all of us to kind of read our own journey or experience with faith, religion, the unknown, into sort of the journey the characters are on. I think that's better storytelling, just first and foremost. What I have seen from Spielberg late career and is less about, hey, my view on this is changing. More, the world is changing. Therefore, I must say it differently, and I must say it louder, and I must say it more directly. So here's an example in which I think the didacticism is really bad. Ready Player One. We have this entire movie where people are doing all sorts of crazy, cool, fun stuff inside this virtual reality. And then at the end of the movie, suddenly Steven Spielberg is like, guys, you should go outside. And I was like, where did this come from? This was nowhere in the movie. This is like Steven Spielberg is like, I just gave you a fun movie, but actually, really, you should be outside. Old man. Yeah. In this case, though, I think he is hyper aware of the fact that people are overwhelmed with information. He's hyper aware that we are currently in a regime in America where suppressing the truth is in the interest of the folks in power. And I'm not even saying that's about just one specific administration. I think you could argue it's multiple administrations. This is just sort of the way that the world has shifted in the 2010s, now 2020s. And I think about The Post as actually being a very powerful film that is very didactic, but it's also very clear and concise and honest about what it's saying. That you understand exactly why he made that movie when he made it with the actors he starred in it. It was meant to be, I think, a very bold, clear statement or rebuke of this sort of like powerful government institutions trying to silence people, right? So now we see
and
that
it takes place in the 70s, which is interesting because that's back in a time where that actually, and I think that's why people bumped on The Post so much when it came out, because it's like, dude, this is not 1972 anymore. This doesn't work the same way.
But I mean, the message, I think that's kind of where I come down here too.
Yeah,
like
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
the underlying message I find powerful. Now, the execution, I think, is the divisive part, because I actually don't think didactic movies are better storytelling. However, Laron and I have said this about many movies on this podcast. I don't think it's better storytelling, but also, unfortunately, we live in a time in an era where audiences, if you do not explicitly tell them the point, it will go over their head. You mentioned Martin Scorsese. The reason Scorsese's got to be really direct about it is because he's like, yeah, guys, I don't know if you know in Goodfellas, you're not supposed to root for the mobsters. You know, they are the bad guys. They're not good. It's just, you know, which is how we also get the similar thing in The Irishman, where he's being very clear about acts of violence being bad. You know, so I think this is Spielberg trying to, once again, for the fourth time, well, you could say fifth. Technically, one of those is an Indiana Jones movie he didn't really want to make. But for the fourth time, he's coming back to Aliens with a different point of view, and he's saying, "Listen, what gives humans our greatest evolutionary advantage is empathy and compassion. We see that with Elliot and E.T. We see that in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I think in a different sort of way, in a sort of reversed, and a nice reversal, Nick, that you kind of point out, you see that in War of the Worlds. But he's like, I want you to make no mistake. This is what I am saying about aliens. And it is, one, I believe they're real. Okay. Two, I really wish they would abduct me. Number three, if aliens exist, what does that say about us as a species? Mm-hmm. I want to believe that our empathy is what distinguishes us from other things in this universe. Yeah, that is what he's saying. And I think that where the rubber meets the road is people are like, I don't agree with that. I don't think empathy is actually a thing that separates us meaningfully. or people don't believe that it can.
I don't
That's
know.
how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's specifically the empathy thing that people are bumping on. I mean, what I would say to movies needing to scream their message, because people don't get it. I have always been of the mind that, like, the inception theory of you plant the idea and let it grow naturally in the viewer's mind, so that it can, like, truly take hold versus clearly stating this is what you should take from this. I think there are two ways to look at that. I mean, Spike Lee, even at his best, is a very didactic filmmaker, and that is something I think that actually helps his movies a lot. Imagine if Malcolm X or Do the Right Thing didn't end the way that they did. Now, granted, he's kind of a specific case, and not everyone can do that. But I think it's more of a chart. And here's something to kind of bat this back. It's without going into spoilers yet, is the final moment, the final line of the movie, is that supposed to be the inception point for the audience, where you've been yelled at a lot throughout the course of the movie, but then it sort of, everything gets quiet. Emily Blunt gets in a almost sort of like urgent, borderline scared state, and then says the line, and then cut to black. And now what does the audience do with that? Maybe that is actually,
us.
Yeah. Maybe that's the inception point. Maybe that's Spielberg saying, okay, you now have the idea. What do you make of this?
We'll talk about more in spoilers, but
sure,
I think you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of what I think he was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think that. We'll talk about more. I think the empathy component, I think, is important though, because
sure. Yeah, no, I agree.
I think it's like he's trying to leave it with the audience to decide what to do with all this, while also trying to posit a potential reality that he wants to see without actually showing it to us.
Which is something I can get on board with. I mean, I like, as weird as I think the Minority Report aspects of the way that Emily Blunt is able to do some of the things she does is, I do think it's actually there, like her with the cop at the beginning, which made me go, oh God, where is this going? I don't know. Oh boy, Papa Steve, are you the one that needs to be doing this? But, those moments where she is able to, reach someone the way that we, that it would be nice if we could do this, if we could come to understandings and, harmonize more by understanding each other. I want to get on board with that. And those are the moments of the movie that I am like, yes, but yeah, let's.
Well, we have a lot more to talk about in spoilers. We went way more in depth in the spoiler-free section we typically do, but the reason I think it's worthwhile is trying to get to the core of why this movie is divisive. Okay, like, we have varying opinions on this show, but generally pro, it sounds like, largely. But I even for the spoiler-free crowd, trying to get at, there's a lot of things in this movie that are really going to work for you, and they're really not. And what's more interesting to me is, like, okay, let's like pick at that a little more. Like, why is it that certain, probably half the audience really hates this movie, is a good question to have and answer. And also, I think it helps answer the question, should you see it? Because the kind of person you are and the worldview you have is probably going to inform how much you appreciate or not the ending. That said, let's get the verdicts so that we can get to the rest of the good stuff and spoilers. What letter grade would we give Disclosure Day? Laron Chapman, I'll start with you.
I think for all my reservations, even with this conversation, kind of extracting some ideas that I hadn't even considered when I was watching it both times. I do think there's stuff here. I just think it's muddled and it's a little unfocused. It could be a little bit more streamlined. I think that Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor spend way too much time apart from each other. That needed to happen about 30 minutes sooner. And I think that would have helped with the momentum of this, because I think once we get to the third act and things kind of take a halt, as both of you have kind of said, I feel like it's because we already kind of know where it's going at that point, and we're spending way too much time not getting any new information. And
there's at least one set piece that's completely unnecessary.
Absolutely. And but for all of the herky jerkiness of this, there's still elements of this that I do find really strong, that I would still like to revisit and that I still enjoyed on second watch. So I'm going to give this a B minus. I'm going to say it may have the potential to grow. It may just reside there, but I think it's a strong enough film to recommend. And I think that if you're a fan of Spielberg's earlier work, for the most part, I mean, I feel like he's there's a lot of those things are present here. And they may just not translate the way they did in 1980 or 1999 or whenever you watched his earlier work, when we were in a different state of mind and under different leadership, and we were more hopeful and optimistic. So it may just be a weird film to be coming out in 2026, but maybe in the year 2030, we might be saying it was the perfect movie to come out now, because it's the message we needed.
Hard to say.
Hard to say, though. Hard to say. Yeah.
Nick Sanford, what letter grade would you give Disclosure Day?
I just give it a B for beats the fuck out of me. It is just so, like any traditional rubric that you try and, use to measure this film's successes or failures just don't really work for me. That's why I keep fritzing out, trying to figure out what the hell even is this thing. All that being said, it is the thing that a lot of us cry about not getting anymore, which is like an original summer blockbuster from like a cinematic master. So for that reason, it's like, yeah, go see it. We're not going to get very many more of these, especially from Spielberg. And I do think, one way that I keep looking at this movie is he's knowingly playing the hits, just trying to recontextualize them in a lot of ways. And so whether you think you're going to like it or not, you kind of have to see it, just because he's such a, monumental foundational part of especially Hollywood, history and how it's been built. That, go see it. One of my favorite things to do is to go see a movie, especially if it's my second viewing and I'm kind of like chilling out and kind of like taking it in a little easier, is to go to the Moore Warren in, central Oklahoma on a Sunday evening. And I come outside and it's 11:45 and the crickets are, greeting me and there's stars outside. That's what it's. And the second time I got to see, Disclosure Day was through that. And it was just, even if I bumped on a lot of it, it's still just magical to be able to go see something as weird and crazy and wacky as this. And then we get to talk about it. So yeah, I say go see it.
Yeah, very nice. I'm also going to give it a B. I think it's still got a lot of great Spielberg magic in it. I think the performances are top shelf. I didn't mention Wyatt Russell, small role in this part in this movie, but funny. Also he's really good.
He's very funny.
But yeah, great. It's a great cast. I think the ideas are compelling. I think where it ends up going, again, the last final sequence, we'll talk about more in spoilers. I thought was just masterful cinematic storytelling, and it's got an all-timer car chase or two. In the movie. Yeah. So for that reason alone, I think it's a must see on the big screen. And Nick, as you so eloquently put it, people are always like, oh, it is a superhero movies and remakes and and then we get Disclosure Day, and then people oftentimes don't show up to these when they say that's what they want. Well, here it is. Are you going to like it? I don't know. You got to see it for yourself. For me, I enjoyed it. It's a letter grade of a B. I think it should about 20 or 30 minutes shorter. They could have cut entire characters out of the movie. They cut set pieces, and I think it would have made for a better, more impactful film. But as is, it's still a good time at the theaters. I only saw it once, but I'll be excited to see it a second time. Well, what else would we recommend to our listeners, whether that be a film, television show, novel, music, video game, to go alongside Disclosure Day? Nick, what do you have for the people?
There is a 1980 science fiction novel by Clifford Simak, S-I-M-A-K. It's called The Visitors. And it's basically like a first contact. How would people respond to this? And it's very, very, almost sort of Clint Eastwood-like in terms of just like how stripped down and just like meat and potatoes it is about the way we would respond to like an ongoing, like, oh shit, they're here, they're around us type thing. While also, they're recognizably extraterrestrial, but not in the way that, we think they would be. And it's just a very efficient, spooky, interesting, just sort of like nuts and bolts look at what, an actual moment in time like this would be. Granted, it's from 1980. So, you kind of have to view it through the context of that. But even within that, it's just a really good short read, and it's got a hell of a, it's like the tail end of those, sort of 50s and 60s sci-fi paperbacks with like the crazy, covers and all this. The Visitors has a really, really cool cover, and it's the reason that I picked up the book, and
Nice.
and I really enjoyed reading it, and I've been thinking about it every day since. Not every day, that would be weird, but
Visitors, check it out. I'd love to hear that. Laron, Chapman, what do you get for the people? What else do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious ones are his earlier Alien works, and just kind of seeing how these movies are kind of having conversations with themselves and how they've evolved or changed or harken back to each other, like Close Encounters, E.T., War of the Worlds. But
and of course, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, most importantly, right?
Yeah, of course, in that one for the outlier pick. But I think one that kind of resonated with me, and that I saw a lot of similarities. Nick, you mentioned that your Mount Rushmore, your other person there, M. Night Shyamalan. I feel like Signs is a good companion piece with this in many ways. We didn't really get into the conversation about the intersectionality of faith and science in this particular movie, because there are definitely some obvious and not so obvious ways that this movie is grappling with this idea of what is our purpose in life? How does the structure of faith operate in a world where something like this exists? And what does that mean about these two things? Can they coexist, or do they negate one? Does one negate the other? And I think that Signs did a really good job of what the threat of this alien force was doing to the faith of the nuclear family. In this case, Mel Gibson, having lost his faith, having lost his wife, and weirdly, how by the end of that film, even with the presence of aliens, he comes back to his faith in an interesting way. And so I think that there is an interesting kind of parallel about that discourse that's happening in this movie. Not necessarily, I'd say, in the most sophisticated way, but it's definitely happening. So I would say M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, one of his great movies that I think.
My second favorite movie of all time, just behind
Okay,
E.T. So
nice.
yeah,
Nice.
There we go. 2 recommends.
Hell yeah.
But there you go.
I'm going to go with Scary Movie 2, right behind that. No, I'm just joking. no, I'm just joking. Signs is a great movie. People can say what they're going to say about M. Night Shyamalan. I generally think that's a movie that holds up pretty well. It also wears its emotions on its sleeve, and I think it's a better movie for it. I am going to go with another
it's also
film.
45 minutes shorter than this one. Sorry to interrupt.
It sure is. But on the note of movies about extraterrestrials invading Earth and being a major paradigm shift for the future of humanity, another film that wears its emotions on its sleeve, Denis Villeneuve's Arrival, one of my favorite movies of all time. Talk about a film that is just really got convictions. I would say a little less didactic in sort of how it's delivering the message, with Amy Adams sort of trying to learn how to communicate with the alien creatures. But a movie that still to this day I think a lot about, and it reminds me that human empathy and compassion and listening are oftentimes the greatest tools to resolving conflict, no matter how seemingly impossible that conflict may seem. And again, funny enough, that was a movie that I think has a very uplifting message that I don't think people got nearly as mad about. And I'm not sure if it's because it's not didactic or because it came out in 2016 before that election. But either way,
that was the first release after the election. That was the Friday after the Tuesday of the election. So we all went into the theater like, oh God.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. I saw there was I had a preview for it, and I saw it like, you're right, 2 days before the election, and then I saw it again 2 days after. Yeah, it came out post election.
We weren't spoiled yet, though. We might have been like jarred by what was happening, but we weren't steeped in it yet. So.
No, we weren't that cynical yet.
It'd be curious to see what that movie exactly as it's made, then what it feels like now. Because God, that was 10 years ago now. That is crazy.
Wild.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if it would have the same reaction, because I remember a lot of the blurbs and stuff where this is the movie that we need right now, language and understanding and blah blah blah. So
yeah, I'm not sure how that would land, but either way, I am very much behind this sentiment, and I think it's an incredible cinematic achievement for Denis Villeneuve. And frankly, we've talked about this on the show. Denis Villeneuve, I love him. He has since then made Blade Runner 2049, a movie I love. He's made 2 Dune movies that I love. He's probably going to make a 3rd movie that I'm expecting to love. And then he's going to make a James Bond movie that I'll also probably like. But man, oh man, it would be really good to see Denis Villeneuve get back to an original concept, because that's probably going to be the last one we get for quite a while. So that is Arrival. Check it out. All right. We've basically tiptoed right around a lot of the spoilers, and frankly, the trailers have done a pretty good job at telling you what's in the movie. We're going to get to the last final moments of this in the spoiler section. So if you're not going to be spoiled on any of that, go ahead and tune out now.
Now, this sounds absolutely insane, and I'm aware of how this sounds. But if you look into the whole story along with all the other supporting accounts, then if you are of the same mindset, you could potentially come to the same conclusion.
So we've actually talked a lot about a lot of the things I thought we were going to cover in spoilers here about, does the disclosure day ring true? But here's what I would love to hear from you guys. Like the film is kind of wraps up Josh O'Connor's Daniel Kellner. He gets there, he uploads all the top secret files directly to the news feed that's broadcast on local news in Kansas City before going viral. And, again, as we've already said, the world sort of slows down and pauses impending World War III because of the broadcast. I want to start by talking about the actual broadcast sequence because, listen, I know there have been other great broadcast sequences in the history of film. That's no secret. But I have to say, this thing goes on for a solid, 10, 12 minutes. It's not short. And I love, but I thought the actual sequence itself was pretty mesmerizing. We had the snaps, the cut to the camera, and you got all these different reports. I'm really curious. What did you, just in terms of cinematic storytelling, visual storytelling, what did you guys think of this particular sequence?
I mean, I liked the news anchor, the primary one that they focus on throughout that process, her emotional kind of that's the one thing about it that did feel honest. Even if it was just her specific reaction and maybe not a universal reaction that everyone was having, you really believed that she was it broke her perception of everything that she knew up to that point. And she's, I don't know how to react to this. In real time, I can't even do my job properly right now because I don't know what I'm seeing and I don't know what it means. And what our place is in this moment in the world and what we do with this information. I'm normally here just to report it, but I'm also now questioning so much too. I found that to be pretty effective overall. I think that, like you mentioned, though, the sequences, the cuts between all of the archival footage was very jarring, very mesmerizing, as you said.
You said jarring, so as in it did not work very well for you.
Well, I mean, I should say jarring in that it
startling.
Startling. Oh, okay. All right. Jarring in that way. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I did enjoy the intercut between all of that. And I'm actually, I actually am a fan of the final moment, and some people are not. And I mean, for a lot of the reasons that we've already kind of articulated here. Because I feel like with the movie being so didactic all the way up to that point, we really didn't need to hear what she was going to say. The movie has already presented the ideas that you can kind of use at your disposal, to try and interpret however you want. But I think by leaving it kind of open-ended in that way, the one thing I probably would have changed is wheeling out the actual extraterrestrial. Because I feel like that there was a remove there when that happened for me, where I was like, it would have been interesting if it was all just kind of concealed in the images. And not just definitively, here is the thing. And now you have no choice but to, but we obviously.
He should have shot that the way that he shot a lot of the early ET scenes, which is he's behind stuff in dark, shadowed, and you can fill in a lot. I agree, it is so weird that it's just fucking there's an alien or just a close up of an alien.
We obviously haven't, because we haven't had that experience. So then immediately now I'm removed from the hypothetical conversation that we're having about all these ideas. Yeah. And now it's a very literal thing that we have not been able to definitively prove yet, so it's kind of like, okay.
Well, I think that's the thing though. I think Spielberg believes it so deeply that it is a literal thing and he wants to present it as such, even though he personally has not had this encounter. I genuinely think that he's like, guys, aliens are freaking real. I'm going to put it right in front of you. And now what do you have to say about that? Like, I'm not joking. Like, I actually think that's where he's coming in at. It's weird though. He leaves it though. Nick, you said this. It says, listen, and you're like, okay. And then cut to black. It's the Inception top, but like, I'm also like, why did you Inception top that? I'm kind of confused. What, and I guess it's like his way of being like, I'm about to die. Here's aliens. They're real. Peace out. Yeah. Do what you will with this information I'm giving you that I actually haven't proven myself, you know?
There's a cast interview where they said that if aliens ever were to come here and we had to select a human being to interact with them, they're like, Steven Spielberg is exactly who we would pick because he has this intellectually curious mind that he would not be fearful. He would actually engage with them on a very very I guess unafraid kind of tone, you know. And I think that that they're probably absolutely right with that. He, as much as he's explored this, I feel like he would be the perfect orator for the human race to discuss anything we needed to about the human race with the alien life.
Yeah, either him or Stormy Daniels would be my two picks. But no, sorry, it's totally derailed everything. I think, I mean, to get like, I wonder if the alien thing again, if it wasn't just so right there in front of you, if it would have been obscured by the big plastic thing that it's in, like we don't really see it. We just see her go up and, you know, whatever. I think that would probably go a long way because the first time I saw it, it was just like, what the fuck am I looking at? You know, I mean, it's just so bizarre and so jarring. In terms of the actual footage itself, I think it's mostly, I mean, there's some bad CGI, you know, that is baffling because in 1993 he gave us what are still the most realistic looking dinosaurs on screen ever, and for whatever reason, like, because even like the train thing in this I'm not a fan of. Like, it looks bad to me, like the feathering around the edge of the you know car, like against the background, like so much of the movie just doesn't really hold up that well. As far as the actual footage at the end, I wonder how it would have been had we not seen any of the stuff at the beginning, like whenever, you know, Josh O'Connor, you know, guy with backpack, I believe is his credited name, shows his girlfriend, like, look at these things. If we had like no sense of what we were going to see,
if it was just obscured the whole time and we just like, we see their reactions to it, but we don't see the things.
I wonder if it would have, if the end would have felt like more of a revelation or more.
Yeah, you're right. They tipped their hand a little too much, a little too early. I think you nailed that because we even see some of the same images again later.
Yeah, it feels bizarre. It feels weirdly repetitive. I mean, what if all they showed was just, here's Richard Nixon showing Jackie Gleason some dead kid aliens or whatever, and then cut to black. No,
it's just clips from Independence Day. That's the whole real. Yeah.
But yeah, it feels spooky, and like the piece of music that plays underneath that, you know, feels like really like it's like haunting, but it's sort of melancholy, but it's like kind of hopeful, but it's, you know, kind of got the juice of like, oh shit, I'm seeing new stuff. I just wish or wonder what it would have been like, you know, had that been the climax of the movie. Come to this movie, everyone, so you can finally see what the actual stuff is going to be. You can't do that if that was like what the whole the whole marketing campaign was, you know, sort of pivoted on, then people would be disappointed. So I don't know what you do. Maybe don't spend $110 million on this movie. Maybe cut a bunch of shit out and then it's cheaper and now you don't have to, you know, make so much back. But it is still, it's palpable. Now, I think the shit leading up to actually seeing all that is kind of dumb. Yeah. Sorry, I keep
well, let's get back to that. Yeah, we're talking. I think you're probably alluding to the scallions. Yes. Yeah. We'll get to that. I just one aside I want to add. I do think that sequence is masterful cinematic storytelling in terms of like the newsroom and the way they're cutting between footage. However, whenever the movie was done, there were two things I was like, oh, the audience you're gonna lose the audience. Number one was the sentimentality, which we've already talked about in depth. Number two was there's when they're playing the footage and they're like, is this real? Oh, like let's scan it with the AI. Scan it. Is it AI? Oh no. Oh, the thing says it's not real. It's not real. Like it's real footage.
Truth pixel. We laughed so hard.
I was like, oh no.
I mean, like Googling it to see if a ground truth pixel is a real thing, and I cannot find it anywhere. I cannot find evidence of that being like. So yeah, like if this movie had more eyeballs on it, I have a feeling Ground Truth Pixel would become like the next generation's like Nuke the Fridge, because that is just like the most bullshit lamp shading, you know.
Well, as a guy who didn't hate the fridge, but I also am like I got
a soft spot for it too. I don't hate it either.
No, I mean, I guess my point is I was like I can go with it. I went with the fridge. And I'm like I can go with it because it's not about. It's like, yeah, that's a hand wavy Hollywood bullshit thing. But this is movies, guys. So that doesn't bother me. But I also am like, oh, I know a lot of people cannot. They'll see that and they'll be like, this whole movie's garbage because that one stupid thing. And even though it's at the end of the movie, I was like, oh, this is gonna really lose a lot of people. CinemaSins exists for a reason, people, and it's not for any good reasons, but you know, people watch it. Anyway, Noah Scallion. Colin Firth in this movie. Nick, as you're alluding to, maybe we'll start at the end and we can work our way back if it feels necessary. Why the hell does he give up? He's like, all right, we shut all the power down. I am literally in front of you with an army of guys who could just come and take you off the stage. And he's just like, I give up, guys. I guess I lost this one. What was going on there? I don't know what to make of it.
It loses me whenever she Jedi mind tricks her and Josh O'Connor out of the, you know, compound or wherever they are. And like Firth has like this, you know, like, oh, you know, I saw my wife and I'm a change, blah, blah, blah. And then the dude chases after like the random, you know, henchman guy, the number 2 or whatever, chases after them. And then we cut back to Colin Firth and he's still doing it. I'm like, that to me is where the actual problem is. What, like, either the antagonist should have changed or just been dispensed with completely, or don't have the scene where her Jedi mind tricks works on Colin Firth to get them out of there. Like, because by the end of the movie, it's like, he doesn't want to be in it. And he's all, you know, he's like hurt and shit and like it just acts like he doesn't want to be there. So we get fucking 5 minutes of like an invisible fire truck chase and all this other bullshit.
That entire set piece, they need to cut that. That was one of the things I'm like, is it a cool idea? Sure. But it wasted so much time. So it was like, what, 10 plus minutes that I'm just like, all right, so when are we going to get to the end? Like,
and so I think a lot of the problem is just the character construction in the screenplay of the Noah Scanlon character.
It feels, on the second watch, it bothered me both times, but it bothered me. But the fix I would have had for it was maybe she did that for everyone except him, and that he still went through with the pursuit, and then maybe at the newsroom that moment happens where he sees his wife and then he has a change and then he sits down. That would have made more sense.
It makes more sense.
Structuring of this did not make sense because it's like nothing changed in him, even though everything seemed to change for everyone else. It's just very bizarre.
And it makes again, God bless Coleman Domingo, he's doing Lord's work in this. It makes his rant about, you know, empathy is like an evolutionary advantage, blah, 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 that much more tedious, because it's like, motherfucker, you just saw like evidence of it, you know, and there's like no real reason. And even the design of like all the Wardex bullshit in general to me is like the weakest aspect of this. Like, it's just not a very, you know, the set, you know, the actual space that they're in for a big chunk of the movie just looks boring, you know, compared to a lot of the rest of the movie, and also compared to a lot of the rest of Spielberg's filmography. He's kind of doing like Minority Report light with a lot of that stuff. And it's just not, I just don't really buy. If you want this shit stopped so much and you want us to actually fear these villains, all these motherfuckers have automatic, like, start opening fire, like, make it scary, make it dangerous. Stop just like waddling around, you know.
It reminded me of like Eagle Eye, that Shia LaBeouf movie. It has that vibe to it, where there's a hokiness to it that doesn't make them feel intimidating at any point, even though like I'm supposed to buy that they're really threatening and what have you. But
especially when all it takes is like, you know, the space dildo or whatever to like turn the power back on. It felt so silly.
Yeah.
And Close Encounters proves that you actually don't really need an antagonist by the end of the movie. It's just like, let the actual shit play out. They just get there and it just starts. Like, it's what we've been waiting for anyway. I don't need, this, which is, I've got a question about like Spielberg antagonists, but I don't think this is the time or place for it. But,
the antagonist is definitely a major weakness of the film. Even though I think Colin Firth is great because he's Colin Firth, but the characterization's wonky. And there's basically in the entire second act of the second half of the movie, I'm like, I don't understand anything about this guy anymore. Like it doesn't make sense. There's so many logic leaps and very inconsistent.
Weird character motivations. Strange, like his character wouldn't do that. That's weird. So there's something.
And what is his goal? Is he working for the government? Is he working for the company? Is he motivated by money? Is he motivated by power? Like none of that.
Coleman Domingo says once your wife died, that's when you went off the rails and started, and it became about like power.
I don't buy that. But
that's a lot of telling me, not showing me.
Exactly.
Though,
well, that's that's if you turn the movie off, you don't, or turn the sound off, you don't get any of that information, like any way, shape, or form. I think the best thing to do is just not have a face to the organization at all. Just make it fucking scary ass black SUVs that show up every once in a while.
You don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Either that, or you got to have a character with a strong ethos, and I just don't think this guy is it. Like he needs to actually. If it's a big if, you insist on having a primary antagonist, cut a couple of the side characters, like the girlfriend, who I actually thought was a huge waste of time anyway. Cut her and like give him like 2 scenes. That's all you really need. 1 to 2 scenes that really clearly communicate. Oh, this is what this guy's about. Yeah. Or the others, if you don't do that, do exactly what you said, which is it's just shady government agency. That's all we need. It's rough.
I think there's a reason that the bad guys in Close Encounters and E.T., they're not given a face, and the one face that is given in E.T. is basically a big kid. The Peter Coyote character. So interesting, weird choices.
Well, one thing I wanted to get back to. We didn't talk about, Laron, you mentioned it, but the girlfriend character that I suggest we cut. I think the whole point of her was to she's a former nun, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I think the whole point of her character was to sort of like get at this idea of like, if aliens were real, this would shake the fundamentals of our faith, right? Like, and kind of exploring that idea. And I find this interesting because, Nick, you said it well earlier. Spielberg has made spiritual movies, but he does not usually make overtly religious movies. Yeah. It's there oftentimes, or it's like a thing that he gets touched upon, but it's not really kind of a core theme of the movie about like the existence of God per se.
Yeah, and he's not doing a Scorsese thing like by any stretch.
It's not silence.
No, not silence. But I find well. Not enough of the movies, but what's interesting is, so he's sort of putting this question in, which I'm like, oh, Spielberg doing that. That's kind of potentially interesting, but it just kind of gets half baked from my point of view. We have this phone call where she calls. Are
you by a computer?
Sorry, dude. That was the most bizarre thing. Hi, are you on the line? Well, it was just crazy. Imagine if right now I got a phone call and said, "Do you believe that aliens exist?" And I say, well, there's nothing in the Bible that says they don't. Like, I like how he just jumps straight to the all this. Anyway, I felt that idea was pretty half-baked, but I do find it an interesting question for a guy like Spielberg at age 80 to be asking about the nature of God, divine deities, whether they exist, and what connections they may or may not have to extraterrestrial beings. And I just want to see what you guys thought of that character and that idea. Did you think it was well done or interesting, or was there anything you took away from it that maybe I missed?
I like the idea. Mm-hmm. I don't like the execution of the idea. I feel like, as you mentioned, her character, I feel like there was a smoother, more sophisticated way to have that discourse without this hokey kind of, as you mentioned, half-baked dialogue between the two of them that kind of, it feels like, let me just spell out the idea in one scene between these two characters, but let's not explore the idea in the larger film itself. And so it feels weirdly divorced from the rest of the movie, even though that is a thread that clearly that he's like picking at throughout the story, just not very again, not very skillfully here, I don't think. And she mentions, what does the nun say? Something like, we're his greatest creation on earth. Like that just explains everything. Like that just all the mystery goes away. Oh, because there's more than the universe than just where we are, and that's like that's not enough.
I too debated things like this in college, and I thought, what if we?
He intentionally, God intentionally omitted that anything else just so that, and we were just too dumb to get it until this very moment, and then that makes total sense. And it just didn't. I just didn't buy that. I like the idea. I just don't think that he had anywhere to go with it. And unfortunately, it kind of just gets sat. He kind of gets sat there, and then we just kind of evolve right back into the genre film that he's making here, instead of having a more interesting idea that I think could have been explored better.
Well, Nick, what was your take on Spielberg's attempt at exploring God via aliens?
I get why he wanted to include that, and I do think that would be a big part of, the social upheaval or whatever would come with an actual, event like this. And so you do need like a character proxy in the movie just to kind of be the mouthpiece of those ideas. And I think Eve Hewson is so good that I liked her character and I liked where she was coming from. And I think by the time they get to the motel and she once again blows the locate, like at that point, he should have been like, fuck you, I'm, going on my own. So that's really more what my problem is with the way that character is utilized. I do think, but I think it feels like more of a Spielberg fear than it does what I think would actually happen, because I think most people of faith wouldn't be bothered by aliens as much as Spielberg thinks they would just become the new deities or whatever. I mean, one of the fucking wackiest moments of this movie is when Blunt shows up to the Coleman Domingo show, and like one of the ladies does, the cat, whatever you call that, at her. And it's just like, that quick, huh? That was very, very, very soon that you started doing this to a walking human being.
She says, I will not be your religion.
Which is some crazy wacky shit. It's like, let's get into that a little bit more. If you feel like
that's the interesting stuff, right?
But he just hints at that. He doesn't actually go into it.
But it's also interesting that he chooses to do this through what I assume is Catholicism. I'm not a Catholic, but it seems very, Catholic coded, when he himself is a very prominent Jewish filmmaker. And I wonder, it's interesting that and I don't want to project anything. I think he thinks he's being respectful about how it's utilized in the movie. And I do think there is something to, I think like the nun stuff didn't bother me as much, just because I think Elizabeth Marvel is such a good actor that she's able to sell, you haven't lost your faith in God, you've lost your faith in people, which I think is valid. I think it's probably the execution that it just feels so quick and so streamlined, and she's kind of sidelined for a lot of the movie and then just comes back just so Emily Blunt can turn the generators back on, or, whatever it is. So I get why they were trying to do that. It didn't bother me as much, but I do agree that the execution probably could have been a lot sharper. And also, what does this movie look like if he just dives straight into the Judaism aspect of that, as opposed to what his idea of Christianity or Catholicism is? So,
yeah,
that's all I feel.
Yeah, I'm also like, the idea that the reveal that aliens existed, the disclosure, not reveal, we only disclose things on this episode.
Correct.
Is that it would stop a World War III, and I would think that there, for a multitude of reasons, but one of the reasons being that a lot of people's perception of the divine would shift pretty dramatically, so much so that you might be asking yourself, why are we even fighting this war, right? Like there's a lot of things that feel like they should be more directly connected, that like he just talks around. Yeah. It feels incredibly half-baked, even though I do think there's a really good, potentially good idea or good movie there. So,
yeah.
Well, closing line of the movie. Final topic. Old man yelling at cloud, or Christopher Nolan spinning the top?
Both.
Yeah. Yes. And
yeah. It's insane, and it's incredibly profound at the same time.
Yeah.
I think this is the thing. I think he's like, I've given you the message. Listen, now it's up to you.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't think we would have been satisfied with any monologue she would have given.
No,
So
yeah,
not giving us one was actually probably smart because people would have hated the movie more.
yeah.
So, and I'm actually okay with open-ended movies. I find like, what is it? The movie last year, some people loved it, some people hated it because of the ending, and it was the Catherine Bigelow war.
Oh yeah.
What is it?
A House of Dynamite.
House of Dynamite. Yeah.
I was listening
dug
to
that
a
ending.
podcast. And,
The ending. I thought the ending was great. Yeah.
I dug the ending because I mean I was like, there's no, I mean, what is going to end with everything blowing up, and then that's not going to be satisfying as an ending. There's not.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's more interesting to think, how would we respond to this moment in real time, and if we put that in real life context now, I'd be horrified to know what this administration, how they would deal with that. That was the terrifying thing.
Makes you think a lot harder. Like, isn't it important that the people who do these really hard jobs are really good at their hard jobs?
They're hard. Yeah, and these are people who are competent at their jobs. So it's like, and they're struggling. So my God, what would we do? We would just be fucked all, So I felt like
I think Trump would just be asking people, what's your jump shot? How good at basketball are you? That would be the entire
I mean, yeah, truly. So I like the open ending here. I actually again, we've already mentioned like the presence of the alien right before that is the only thing that I think undercuts the ambiguous tone of this here. Is, like I said, if we had been shrouded a little bit more in secrecy with the alien thing, or at least just never definitively saw one in front of the characters outside of the footage, I personally think that would have been a little bit more effective. But all the same, I think what the ending's doing is, like you said, it's kind of redirecting the conversation that the movie's having with the audience, and now passing the baton to them and saying, now do with this what you will. What would we do in this scenario? And I think that that's probably the most effective ending they could have gleaned from the material that we have here. And so I'm a fan of the ending, actually.
Here's a question. Is she saying listen in the alien language and now we can understand it?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I like that idea. Nick, one thing, if I don't know, I don't open another can of worms, but one thing you'd mentioned to me before we started recording was just like, what if this movie was told from Emily Blunt's perspective?
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting idea. Is that kind of where you're going with the thought?
I mean, because a lot of the problems with like the whole AI rebuilding a childhood home so that you can, blah, 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 self-actualization, whatever. Like, we know all of that shit going into it. And so then it kind of feels tedious and, wheel spinning when we have to now sit for 10 minutes and watch the abduction thing. And so if the movie is completely from her perspective and we're seeing things, just from her point of view, and learn all of this as she learns it as a complete outsider versus, kind of this sort of omniscient, really passive, sort of point of entry into the movie. I don't know. Is it better? Is it also then just becoming a remake of Close Encounters, only now she's Richard Dreyfuss? I don't know, but I do wonder what this movie is like if she is just like the capital M main character and we are learning all of this as she is. What if she, has this freak out, this weird alien thing on live TV, and now Coleman Domingo is trying to, and now she gets the call from Coleman Domingo, hey, you've got this guy that you've got to, find, and blah, blah, blah. And what if, to, help squeeze things out, what if her boyfriend, Wyatt Russell, is the more religious guy who, worries about the implications of all this as it goes along. So now you don't need this other character, and so on and so forth. But it's just it's just a thought that I had.
It certainly makes it more of a mystery too, to what's actually happening. I think, because I think you mentioned, throughout the podcast, and that we've all talked about, is the movie tips its hand too much multiple points of view. Like we get way too much information too early, so much so that the reveals don't really feel like reveals because we already saw it coming. It's like, we get a recreated version of her house. Now, the first time I see it, I'm like, oh, he looks like he's on a film set. What's that? But by the time you actually get there, we've seen that same thing like 4 or 5 different times. You're like, oh, I bet he's rebuilding. And then we've seen the trailers. So you're like, I bet he's rebuilding the house. Like, so like you said, by the time you get to it, you're like, as kind of tedious. And now we're just wasting 10 minutes on this invisible house thing, you know.
All the more reason why the movie should be shorter too.
Yes.
You know, there's so much. There's a repetitiveness to certain things like that. All those individual instances of those things could have been removed. You know, so I can find 30 minutes right now that could be removed from this movie. You know,
Or and the other thing is like if you're getting phone calls from like Coleman Domingo and Colin Firth, who do you trust? And you don't know who either one of them are. You know what I mean? Like there's a mystery. Like, oh gosh, I am speaking other languages. I don't know. I think you're onto something. There's an idea there.
Yeah, I mean those could be like the two, you know, the angel and the devil on her shoulder. And she has to decide, like, oh, fuck, what? Like, as a news broadcaster, that would be such an interesting question, you know, for her to have to grapple with is like, oh, shit, what would be the actual consequences of this? Do I do this? And, there's so much stuff you could do with that while still doing her weird, you know, she's speaking in languages she doesn't realize she's speaking and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. So much to talk about with this film. Love it or hate it, I'm glad Spielberg's making interesting films. And I know it's divisive, but there's been a lot of great conversation on the internet, on this podcast, among friends for Disclosure Day. I think maybe the final, and we'll keep it short, brief, to the point. Just a simple question I want to answer before we wrap up. Steven Spielberg's done many alien movies. There have been many, many more. Does Disclosure Day make it into the canon as a definitive UFO, or I guess you would say UAP movie? Nick, what do you think?
Ask me in 5 to 10 years. I know that's a bullshit answer, but probably. Yeah. But yeah, ask me in 5 to 10 years.
Right. Yeah, I think the answer is probably. Probably. It's hard to say right now because he's using the aliens in this context as a device. To have a more thematic conversation. So, but I guess how that unfolds in real life will kind of inform that, I feel like, in many ways.
Yeah, I'm going to go with also probably and mostly yes. If not for no other reason, it's almost certainly Spielberg's last film about aliens, and it ends with such a definitive cliffhanger and divisive, yes. Memorable, also yes. So I think it sticks around. All right, there you have it, listeners. That's our take on Disclosure Day. We all say go see it and have some interesting conversations about it. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Where can folks follow you and all the cool things you're doing?
I've got an Instagram. I think it's Nick the Sanford. And it's mainly just bullshit. It's just me just kind of being a jackass on That's all I think social media is good for. But I got a movie that we're working on now called The Green Gas That Killed Them All. It also has an Instagram page, and I think it's at Green Gas Film. So that's the more substantial, go there if you want to support the stuff I'm doing. But
very nice. Working on a new film. Always excited to hear that. I'll have to give that page a follow at myself, actually.
Thank you.
Laron Chapman, where can people follow you and all the things you're doing online?
They can follow us here, obviously, at the Cinematropolis for more podcast episodes. I have a column here, Real Insights with Laron Chapman on the Cinematropolis. And as of recently, exclusive here, I am also writing for the Oklahoma Gazette as a full.
Hell yeah.
Very nice.
So multiple different places you'll be able to find me for reviews and such.
Yeah, very cool. Check Laron out. Of course, again, following me over at the Cinematropolis on all the social medias at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. Also, if you're not following the Cinematropolis on Instagram or YouTube, I have been doing a lot of these shorts episodes. I drop the audio into the feeds for subscribers of the podcast, but if you want the full video content, these are usually just super short, like 1 to 2 minute little reviews about new releases, usually a day or two before they come out. So you can check those out. That's at the Cinematrop on Instagram or the Cinematropolis on YouTube. Give us a follow and a subscribe there. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We're going to continue the extraterrestrial conversation and our next review next week with Supergirl. I'm hearing a lot of Mad Max comparisons on the internet, so that has me interested. Will it live up to those? We'll find out. We'll catch you again next time.